And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Looks like you got an object right in front of you, Mark. Can you look out there?
Discovery, we're sending you an order to stay vector.
Sparkling bed of diamonds out there.
For over 2,000 years, humankind has speculated that it is not alone in the universe. But it wasn't until September 1959 that American astronomers first put forward, less than a year after that, the idea was translated into practice. Since then, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has fired the imagination of millions around the world. However, the practicalities of SETI make the proverbial search for the needle in the haystack pale into insignificance. In fact, it's 5 times the size of Earth. All sky surveys up to a distance of 70 million light-years made at Harvard, Buenos Aires and Ohio since the 1970s have located and repeated surveys. The world of astronomy then remains divided between the true believers, who think they will find evidence of extraterrestrial life in our or other galaxies, and skeptics who regard that, and the work of SETI in particular, as either a diversion from more important things or a gigantic waste of time, resources and money. It's a curious forbidden, therefore, to spend its time, resources and money on seeking out contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. But what if that extraterrestrial intelligence were to establish contact with NASA, directly or indirectly? What then? And where does NASA and its US Congress stand when it comes to UFOs? Could a small proportion of the residual evidence, gleaned from millions of worldwide UFO observations and case histories, point to an extraterrestrial presence already in our midst? Should claims and statements made by credible professionals and observers be ignored? Should intensive and documented interest shown in the UFO phenomena by every strand of the military and intelligence community be simply tossed aside? Should countless photographs and film footage taken of the Is it pure coincidence, then, that midway through this period, reports of flying saucers began to emerge from around our world, at the precise moment when man was signalling his intentions to step forth from his earthbound environment? The phenomenon we now term UFOs signal back. Throughout the documented history of those early pioneering manned missions into space, one can find numerous references, made by both astronauts and cosmonauts, to witnessing, and sometimes describing, curious anomalous objects seen while in orbit around the Earth. John Glenn likened these to fireflies, and for a time NASA actually believed they had. In the late 1980s, those reports took on far greater significance with the arrival of the camcorder. In the space of a few short years, what was once regarded as an extremely rare event, to capture a UFO on film, has now become commonplace. And while a sizable proportion of that video footage leaves most unimpressed, like the phenomena itself, a small residue of what remains can be termed impressors. But the video evidence, recorded independently at several different locations, suggested otherwise. Much has been said, written and claimed as to why more UFOs have emerged from Mexico than any other nation on the planet during the 1990s. Indeed, there are those who would argue that most, if not all, of the 5,000 plus hours of amateur camcorder footage taken of UFOs in the skies above Mexico this past decade alone, meteors or falling space debris. Dependent on your point of view, the objects depicted in these sequences are either balloons or UFOs. Interestingly, during filming, the camera operators and those closest by never refer to these objects as balloons. Others liken them to spheres, a term first used alongside Foo Fighters when describing anomalous objects seen by Allied pilots operating in the Pacific theater of World War II. Outside of Mexico, there have been other recorded instances where spheres have been seen and captured on film. Here are 2 recent examples. These spheres appeared over Stirling, Scotland during the summer of 1998. Local resident Brian McPhee borrowed a camcorder from his cousin after being puzzled by the repeated appearances of these objects high overhead. Some were seen to hover close to and then descend into or through the clouds. Elsewhere, some were seen to emerge from the clouds before darting away at incredible speeds. But the term sphere is not just used to describe anomalous objects seen from the ground. Curiously enough, just 2 months after the Mexico eclipse, had been explained away by NASA as nothing more than ice crystals, whose sudden movement was caused by the release of directional jet nozzles from the shuttle itself. What though the mysterious meteorite streaks seen in the same sequence? And what of this counter-explanation to NASA's ice crystal theory?
The dichotomy that
While many still remain unconvinced that the STS-48 footage captured intelligently controlled spacecraft in mid-flight, it was the catalyst that would persuade both UFO researchers and amateur astronomers alike to pay much closer attention to space shuttle missions in the future, and, as you will learn later, eventually lead him to an extraordinary discovery. During 1996, there were 2 notable events. In August of that year, NASA announced that it hit headlines around the world, and more or less ensured that NASA would have no difficulty in raising the necessary funds to embark on an ambitious, unmanned space shuttle. Astronauts on board STS-80 filmed something remarkable. Scores of anomalous objects could be seen skirting towards Brazil, more specifically Sao Paulo. Were they expecting something? Whatever suddenly streaked into view would appear to suggest they were. But what was it? A short time would pass before anomalous activity was filmed again, only this time in close proximity to the Mir space station. The STS-84 docking and undocking mission with Mir provided breathtaking images. It also provided further puzzles. Thanks to an amateur astronomer known as Willie, some of the footage transmitted by STS-84 was disseminated around the world. Hardly surprising, since it contains several remarkable scenes. Determining which one has most appeal, or greater mystery, is debatable. But why does this particular sphere suddenly shuttle? Or something else? Assuming then that this is mere space debris, would it not be considered dangerous to those on board both the space shuttle and Mir space station? To answer that question would require detailed analysis of pristine STS-80 traces of extraterrestrial intelligence from afar. Others are designed to receive signals transmitted from much closer to home. During the 1990s, millions of miniature-sized dishes sprang up across Britain as satellite dishes to monitor and record transmissions beamed down to Earth from the space shuttle. But what if one of those individuals had the means to utilize an even greater array of satellite receiving dishes to record and subsequently log every second of NASA transmissions, from not one solitary space shuttle mission, but from several, covering a period of almost 5 years? What then? That incredible scenario first came to light late one evening in the summer of 1999, when Graham Birdsall, editor of UFO magazine in Britain, took a call on his mobile phone. The caller was Martin Stubbs, a cable TV station manager from Vancouver in Canada. For the next 45 downlink transmissions, originating from numerous space shuttle missions that stretched back over a period of several years. And, amidst all of this carefully logged footage that amounted to over 2,500 hours, Martin further claimed to have stumbled across something equally extraordinary, palpable evidence for the reality of not one, but 2 extraterrestrial life forms. In order to fully verify these and other equally amazing claims, Russell Callahan was dispatched to Vancouver last August to meet up with Martin in person. Joining him would be Brian Borshoff, project director of the Phenomena exhibition, who flew in especially from Australia. After spending an entire week in the company of Martin, engaged in, for the most part, viewing countless hours of NASA footage, the staggering implications of what he'd uncovered soon became apparent. For although Martin had come across countless further examples of mysterious sphere-like activity, his trained eye as an experienced TV editor had picked out something else. something that he would find compelling, something that others would later find amazing. At the conclusion of their visit to Vancouver, base with Martin Stubbs in the first place. Call it intuition, call it good luck, call it what you will, but on hearing Martin relate his extraordinary story, he sent out a signal far more powerful than that generated by any satellite. And what better means to demonstrate the point than by having Martin recount that story in his own words.
Hi, I'm Martin Stubbs, and I'm a resident of Bowen Island, Canada. The city we directly commute to on a little ferry, 20-minute ride, is the great city of Vancouver. And it's here that I was able to discover, through NASA's own video downlinked from the shuttle, two types of phenomena that, from my estimation, should not be there. The first phenomena is a phenomena that is virtually invisible to the human eye, but when filmed with a CCD camera and you break the video into frames, and there's 30 frames per second. Then you split the frames into fields, because each frame contains 2 scan fields, and it is in those fields we have discovered our second space phenomena. It's not a matter of finding something that is a reasonable doubt scenario. It's more about, let's just keep collecting, studying, and analyzing, and eventually the jigsaw puzzle will come together, and it's finally happened. I held a very privileged position in the city of Vancouver. I was in charge of, for the past 20 years actually, community access cable stations. And those are public stations that use volunteers, interns, make all their own programming, and put it out on the means. And I talked to our technical department and asked them if they could give me my own dish. And they did. And I set my machines and went about my normal daily life of managing 2 of these facilities. And I just would go in a unique position of having the means to do it. I was in a position to do it, and I had all the motivation. The second the shuttle countdown began, I recorded, and I stopped recording when it was at a full stop.
Right. So it was a pretty demanding exercise.
Well,
you obviously...
the SDS 61, which was the Hubble Space Telescope, because NASA had decided to make this the showcase mission. It is a very important mission. The Hubble Space Telescope is the very most delicate and important thing, and these gentlemen were going to spacewalk for 7 days environment. And from the very first moment, the first download came, I found
education exercise in watching the mission footage.
It was everything. It was a self-education thing. It was a curiosity of why no one from the year 1991 till 1994 had bothered to look at any other footage. And I was quite naive and wasn't aware it was all being downloaded, because I'd bought into the popular culture or the urban myth that they were scramblers as well as everything else. And I spend an awful lot of my day looking at videotape at amazingly fast speeds, reviewing people's programs for critique reasons and things. Sure. My eyes are trained, and I kept seeing something. So when an older model, funny enough, not the digital model, that literally when you rolled the thing, it would break, and that's when I found them.
So you were finding these on one of those 60 frames?
I found, in fact, the first one I found, I only found one.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I should be able to, if this is real, I should be able to do it again. And then I found 2. And it just went from there.
What should we really be seeing? How did you know that we were looking at something that that shouldn't be there, that was unusual? I mean,
Well, the first thing is that in my career, literally in 60 of those, nothing happens. Something was happening literally between 1/30th of a second and 1/30th of a second, because there's 30 frames per second. So it was just sort of a, let's look at this, and it, when I found it was in a scan field, and then the way it works is it scans.
so it was moving very fast.
Very fast. So being a manager and being in charge of a television station, somebody could fake this. You can't. Then I took the sample, to make a long story short, eventually made it up to the scientific community and to a think tank and a behavioral lab and physicists, and the entire pixelization process down, and found it was still there.
So they really didn't expect to see anything in the beginning, but by the time you finished, they were excited.
I think they expected probably that we'd have more of a real-time phenomena, which is still spectacular.
And probably, I guess, that they felt they might be able to.
William Davis, who is the cigarette-smoking man in the X-Files, is a member of the Skeptic Society, due to me.
Sure.
But the amazing thing about this other phenomena, the one that's virtually, I would say it's invisible, although it isn't once you see it. You begin to see it all the time. Is it blew their minds. It blew their minds.
Did they offer any explanation for what they thought it might be? Or are they as baffled?
There's a professor at Simon Fraser, Professor Weinberg, who literally said it had to be it had to be actually there. The chief Hubble designers, engineers.
That must have been a great opportunity.
It was a great opportunity, and what was interesting is when we showed him the spherical shapes on video clips, on video stills, he was comfortable, which meant, he could throw the ice crystal theory, because it was a very small sample at that point. It was only the first time I'd ever done it.
At that point, he confirmed that what you were showing him were ice crystals, or?
No, he just thought that was basically, that's just all kinds of stuff you don't understand about ice crystals. So he didn't have any, it was the Hubble fellow at the planetarium after the lecture. The still frames of this second phenomena, reversal, and we obtained, we meaning an artist friend and I, who's, after he got the number and phoned this fellow, and he got hello, and the second he said who he was, there was back talk, things like, it's that guy, blah, 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 and the phone went down. In other words, communication was cut off. Not
a very good public relations exercise for the...
No, but we found it odd that, these are okay and these aren't. So anyway, that's how it started. So Professor Weinberg, who's a wonderful man, said to me something he'd never said to anybody before. He actually sat down, sort of rolled his hands through his head and whatever hair he had, and said, I believe there are things out there, and it's just a matter of an et cetera, et cetera. Well, my friend, my partner, could not believe. He knows this gentleman, has worked through the Canadian Space Agency with him. This Professor Weinberg studies why they come home depressed. Elizabeth Bondar, our famous first woman in space, it isn't generally known in Canada, but she was depressed, massive depression for the first 2 weeks after she landed. And so they really had to study what's going on. Sure. And they found that they were missing, that there was the familiar shapes that we see every day not in the space program. And that's what these people were doing, working with the Canadian Space Agency.
Right.
It says they talk to orca whales up there, and they photograph the brain and put pictures in front of you and then colors. No, and I went there. So, and he told me things. He said,
You mentioned something to me earlier about the lighting conditions and the fact that you felt they were self-illuminating.
Well, I needed, Yes, at first I actually thought, you know, I was my own worst skeptic. I've learned that in television. You know, you don't present anything unless you're totally researched and sure. Went down when the sun came up, when there was refraction, when there wasn't refraction. I found them under every lighting condition, and my only conclusion from looking at the video and continually looking at it is obviously when they seem to have slowed down and you see more of a craft structure. When they're moving very quickly, you'll see this long streak. Right. But the interesting thing is, after after 1,000 of them, and I still photographed them, you lay them side by side and you start to see common things. You start to see markings. You start to see kind of shape. You know what it is? The shot from NASA's cameras is 2, and I thought it would stop at 2. But this phenomena I call number 3. There are 2 space phenomena. And this third phenomena, I don't blame people for not discovering it or anything. I don't think anybody has tried not to discover it.
Well, it sounds to me like you had to go through a lot of work.
I just wonder how many people with my technical television background have tried this. And I don't think a lot of scientists have. I just know that Professor Weinberg was absolutely knocked out of his... He just couldn't believe it. And as I built the sample up, I didn't believe it more. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's reached the point. But I don't want all of what we expect it to be, that it's intrigued me much more. It's no archetypal, no...
Martin, going
into direct dishes. And then the most extraordinary discovery of all was I recorded CNN's live feed of a recent shuttle. I think it was STS-86 or 84, one of them, of the docking. And even though I guess a lot of people were looking for the spherical thing that knew about them, I was looking for was almost, well, how much more do you need, you know? I really did not, I didn't want to come forward with the third phenomena, but then the second space phenomena, until I was able to be absolutely certain that this had that incredible spherical phenomena that is I didn't want that to be dissed.
After the gentleman at the planetarium that decided that he didn't want to talk about it,
yeah.
Have you spoken to any other? Have you spoken to NASA or any qualified people there that might be prepared to comment on what you've seen?
It's so hard to tell this story, but again, I then met a physicist from California, actually from Topeka Canyon, who used to be a part of a think tank there, red, blue, or blue-green, or something like that.
Sure.
One that was going to have gray aliens and things in it. You know, we were really looking to substantiate it as just there. The head of the astrochemistry department. And I've turned over the documentation which outlines the whole set of email conversations in which at no time does he say that the spherical phenomena...
Spheres.
No, that's the interesting thing. We decided that, you know, that it would be better to continue our work, which is massive. I have massive amounts from every flight of...
Much.
Well, I'd already seen Professor Weinberg's reaction, and you really have to be right with them to hold their hand. The tether, which is a 12-mile long electrical, $100 million satellite control, and at every point...
It broke?
Yes, mysteriously it broke just in the right place. If it broke a little bit too close to the shuttle, it would have taken the shuttle out. If it had broken a little further on, it would have maybe destroyed the wing or something, you know? Because you hear the astronauts say, well, it couldn't have happened in a better place, you know? And then, just to continue on the distance, as these things started swarming it, and
this is the second,
the
spherical phenomena.
The spherical phenomena, and
are NASA commenting on these?
Sort of. That's it wasn't like, oh, this is this, and then they dropped it.
There's a few of these things in
rock at it. That's what it's like. And how do you count the hornets? So they're all going in different directions. And I use tricks like fast forward, because when you go in fast forward, if they're all stars, they all go in the same direction. These things are all moving. But what was very interesting is they're saying, how far is the tether? Well, the tether is now 100 miles. And they zoom with their incredible zoom in these spheres in front of the tether, and some of absolutely clearly, no problem at all, they're behind the tether. And if the tether's 12 miles, and these are half the size of the tether going behind it at 100 miles away, they're not specks of ice.
Well, even for me,
but again, I'm merely saying that I'd like that I'm just saying what they can't be. And I've never heard of a 6-mile ice crystal that's spotted crystal clear 100 miles away, etc. So there's hundreds of those examples. Then they've called them on the different videos. One time they said they were shooting stars and meteors. Then the same phenomenon appears on the next. He did, and it continued. We have documentation from various publications that shows that they know clearly. They didn't have an answer for 3 to 4 space flights. They had an answer to what, the blue haze around the Earth is. 3 or 4 flights in, where it says, John Glenn's fireflies spotted over Perth. They're still calling them John Glenn's fireflies. And we have an astronaut making the comment on the 25th anniversary of the moon flight. He says, it's hard to believe, but he says it's a fact that we thought that John's fireflies, again, Glenn's fireflies, were living critters. Shuttle, or the whatever capsule that I've forgotten. Even though they had a camera on that, he took his own. And when he saw the fireflies, and it's all documented, and it's even in the movie The Right Stuff, he holds the camera up while the fireflies are above his head, and he says, I better film or you guys are going to think I'm nuts. And when you see those pictures, and you see the pictures I've done, and they don't have the video I have, and they haven't done the research, and that they don't have a chance. I wouldn't be able to downlink what I got. The non-military people, for instance, there's a flight I have where it's basically the entire flight was the control room except for the spacewalk. The spacewalk was to test the new backpacks, and it's a famous walk because the fellow the astronaut flipped around and couldn't stop. So that's what made the news. But if you look at the whole spacewalk, and everybody in the media had a little camera, you couldn't see it. So I wasn't looking for it. They drew my attention to it. I looked, and there the object emerged. And the third thing he's saying to the third astronaut is, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's the camera filter. And then he even confirms, off 10, 11 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock, And then there's a pause, and the control room below tells if nothing had happened. Yet it's right on tape, audio, video, and you see the object they're referring to. So, but my video is available, and many people have home dishes. And even though NASA moved the satellite almost onto the horizon, this is a great tape. We love looking at it. Everyone just thinks it's the greatest. No, the Canadian Space Agency has been very cooperative. That's what I'd like to say. The Canadian Space Agency has been cooperative. I communicated with Washington headquarters and received an answer. And we've been receiving answers from JPL in California. Everyone's talking to us. No one's threatening us. And all the video has been totally available the whole time. So I don't hold that NASA is hard but fun thing to do. And I think the preponderance, I think you have to do what I did. You have to record every moment of every flight. First, he said very seriously, if you really want to do this, duplicate it. Get it in every lighting condition. Get it under every circumstance. Get it in every circumstance you can. And the one that made me happiest, funny enough, was almost the last flights I recorded, because I got it in black and white. There was a CCD camera put on one of the flights, and I thought, that's the charge coupling device, which is a electronic tube. CCD was on the black and white. I challenged myself again. You should be able to find them, and I did. So I've got them in black and white, but and the door wouldn't open. I remember watching that and seeing all of this third phenomena, this second space phenomena, but the third phenomena, all around the door. And they were moving the door and trying to get it open. And I'd never seen right on the feed that there was something had come through the door. They were seeing these flashing colored.
What? I just thought of it in my imagination. Yeah, I saw it too, so it's not. There was two of them. There's another one. What are they? There's sort of lights flickering in here. Maybe they're taking pictures. What is this? Is this thing passing in front of us? Where are the lights? Which one? Oh, no, I was guessing that one for a second, but I had that one the whole time. Yeah, I was looking at that one too.
The spherical phenomenon, first time I got some kind of a feel that the astronauts have seen from Phenomena 3, the second space phenomena. It's something that should be this challenging. I don't know why most people think something this different is just going to be nuts and bolts. Turn on the TV and watch the new Roswell series. Visit the X-Files. You know what I'm saying is that this is a... Yes, somehow, well, they're very aware of each other. Somebody suggested to me, what if they're the same phenomena? But I've studied, as if something comes up to your nose and in 1/30th of a second has a tour, like an iceberg or something, or a glacier, and then leaves.
Without us even
aware of it. And if it chooses, for whatever reason, to look at something, it tends to slow down. And that's why I believe it appears when there's a $100 million satellite disrupting the air. It appears when the Hubble Space Telescope is being repaired. It appears whenever something is happening. It's an amazing phenomena, and what I like about it is these aren't ice crystals. There's nobody in science in Canada that I've ever met, and David Sarita, my partner, in terms of the research end, not a part what this is. Nobody suggested anything except that it must be what it is, but they don't know where to go with it. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to react. It's easier if you can sort of argue that may or may not be something. But once you just look at it, it stuns you.
Representatives from over 50 nations took part in a major international UFO congress. Among them was Alexander Ballantyne, a former Soviet cosmonaut who spent 6 months aboard the Mir space station. In his lecture, Ballantyne conceded that he and many other cosmonauts had seen UFOs. We cosmonauts had a golden rule, he said. If you see something strange, keep watching it, because you may never see something like it again. Later, Ballantyne shook the assembled audience when he claimed that future anomalous images observed and/or recorded in space would be shared between the Russian space agency researcher Boris Choronov acting as interpreter. Ballantyne assured Graham Birdsall that some UFOs reportedly seen by both Americans. Of course, we accept this, but some of the things seen have nothing to do. Other former Mir cosmonauts have come forward. Intriguingly, here's the exact same sequence, only this time recorded by Martin Stubbs from U. These objects are patently of interest to those watching in Russia, So might the same be true of their counterparts at NASA?
It's like a lot of moonlight glinting off the ocean, a whole sparkling bed of diamonds out there. Is that a real picture, or are we just getting some video fuzz?
That's some of the ice crystals that we were dumping out earlier, and yeah, it's a beautiful picture.
That's a great comment.
And it's a combination of moonlight making those ice crystals sparkle, and maybe as well as some of...
A number of shooting stars in that view. The camera has now moved to a point. Okay, the Mir space station is about an inch from
Camera Charlie on
the left-hand side of the screen. It is slowly moving closer to the left-hand side, and it has a very light flashing to it.
We think on the middle of the screen, way to the left-hand side.
Looks like you got an object related mark. Can you look out there? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't see anything. Yeah, we think the camera filter came off, Mark. It's about your 10 o'clock. maybe an accumulation of the tether. And we are downlinking camera Delta now.
Top of the tether.
Of the tether, unfortunately, we don't see the tip of the boom, but in a few seconds you'll see the tether break. And this one, of course, was not a 10 lead, it just recorded. It could not be bumped either, so it...
Copy, Claude.
So, the left-hand corner there, straight as an arrow. So it seems from here.
Yes, sir, we have it. Great picture.
That was about as much as we have of it.
Columbia and the satellite now 77 nautical miles apart. Again, that call reporting that the crew can see the tether and see the satellite, that it's beautiful. This view the satellite, again just moving into sunrise. 81 nautical miles now from
Guys getting the image?
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and it flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angle, flashed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do...
that description by the crew. This is the tether in the satellite with approximately 12 miles of tether still attached to it. Columbia and the satellite now just passing over the two spacecraft. Now, controllers for the satellite did have communications with it during.
View, a lot more contrast visible. And how wide does that tether, a much wider strand than we'd expect? Can you describe which way the satellite is visible on that strand?
.100 nautical miles.
Zoomed, and you see the full extent of that.
Okay, Claude. Thank you.
About 3/4 of the way will not lie flat and will not see it, as I mentioned earlier.
And Tammy, if you could, simultaneous with trying to put it in the unlocked position, if you would move the handle a little bit back and forth.
Do that. That's been working out, Bill?
Okay, and we can see the handle moving on the outside.
Okay, and get any indication that the lock is being actuated?
We have seen countless examples of the spheres, the first space phenomenon, But until now, few have ever come across, least of all seen described, what has been labelled the second space phenomenon. Those that have been left speechless, including eminent scientists, astrophysicists and, as we have learned, highly placed figures within the Canadian Space Agency. Someone who was prepared to comment publicly after being shot.
If the footage that we saw came to be true and really are showing an alien spacecraft or something like that, I say that if there is a cover-up, the people who are doing this cover-up are an enemy of entire Earth race, because we are not children and we must know we must know the truth. It doesn't matter if there are people that are not, they don't know that the cover-up goes.
Guido could have easily dismissed this sampling as ice crystals at best or errant nonsense at worst. Both he and a great many others attached to the footage. The onus surely now rests with people like Guido and others elsewhere in the scientific community to determine whether or not the second is it extraterrestrial, and is it intelligent Stubbs. It would be the vindication of what he and millions like him have always maintained, that we are not alone. A fleeting glimpse of something that sped across his television monitor that most would fail to notice. He focused on us and found them in abundance. But discoveries known to man have often been born from chance events. But is it remotely conceivable that one of the greatest discoveries operating out of a small community station in Vancouver? History will surely be equally prepared to explore the limitless possibilities now before them. But who among there will be many who will choose to ignore it, blinded by self-imposed scientific dogma and bland indifference.